My name is Seth Stell. I'm a serial entrepreneur. Um, Ran a nonprofit and created a nonprofit in the past here, Seattle, bringing people from minority backgrounds together. Currently, right now, I own and operate a digital creative agency with a distributed model across Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, Spain, and the United States, and Sri Lanka. In addition to that, I have an investment group called Stell and Jones, me and my friend from childhood, Rance Jones. So doing a lot of things. So that's what I'm into.
Hey, it's Kellen, and today on Diversified Game, it's another interview I could do again while in my pool, swimming underwater, no notes needed, nothing. Because my guest today, and he doesn't know it, haven't told him this, but I do talk about this to people. He created an organization with, I believe it was 3 other brothers in Seattle. Very cold, sometimes lonely place, depending on how you're doing it. And here, Seattle connected and made me normalize while fighting, trying to get and prove that I was more than entertainment. I was more than government. Okay, we did that. Want to get into the tech space, want to really show how much of a geek and nerd I am, and all the tech companies, they'll hire you. You might be that one. And this man put a group together where I heard, oh, I'm not the only one. And when you say too much, they tell you tira la puerta because you're just here as a number sometimes. So
Yeah.
Seth Stell is not just that, though. And he's not what he just said in the beginning. He's really genuine. He'll shake everybody's hand in the room and he'll make you feel 7 feet tall. You guys know I'm really 7 feet tall in my real life. I just happen to be, at this point. And he's 7 feet tall too, but and just growing, because we're all just growing. But he's like a real magical, in the best way possible, person, because it's more about what he can do for you. And yeah, he's a businessman. Yeah, he's, helping people I know every day in his life, but that's just his life. But he's also a great fisher, an angler. He also, this view that you're about to see, he built this house in Colombia. And I said, Seth, how much of this did you really build? Because did you let anybody help you? And he said he did let about 19 to 20 plus people help him, but he could have did it all by himself. So you guys, when you see this interview, you share this interview, you vibe out, you look at his views, the man could do anything in the world. We wish he'd run for politics, but he ain't trying to stress himself out. Look at that view. It's beautiful. Seth, welcome to Diversified Game, bro. How are you doing?
Man, I'm doing the best I've been in the last 10 years of my life, maybe 15. I can honestly say it. And I didn't even get to that realization until about 2 weeks ago. Honestly, that's how much I've been grinding, how much I've been focusing on. And, it's been a nice ride to where I'm at. And certainly there's been a lot of happiness and a lot of blessings along the way. But right now, I'm kind of living out that sky's the limit moment and realization of like, it just continues to inspire me to continue to move forward. So I was running low on energy a couple of years ago when I put all these plans together, and I made it. I fought through it. I try to think that I have limitless energy, but I had some moments that reminded me that I am human and I do need to rest and I do need to, recharge. And I'm here, man. I'm at, it's one of the few times in my life I can say how I pictured it and imagined it in my head is actually exceeded it. And so that's pretty cool. Reaching goals are always possible, but sometimes when you get there, it doesn't feel how you want it. I got a lot of friends who play in the NBA and play in the NFL, and we always have these conversations about, they get the deal, they get to the league and all that, and they got everything, but then, some of them have the feelings and some of them don't. And so, not that I'm a professional athlete, but it's that whole journey of like beginning something and getting to the end of it and then seeing how you feel at it. Man, I couldn't be more excited where I'm at. I want to do more. And so, yeah, man, I'm blessed right now. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling recharged. I'm feeling confirmed in everything that I thought I could do. And like I said, my sentiments and my feelings right now are exceptional. They've exceeded how I thought I would feel when I got to this point. I feel blessed.
Tell the people in the best way you can, because you have to write a book, so they can really see. But tell them, like, from Nevada to Texas, how do you get here? Because social media tells just, okay, the great times. And so people can only kind of judge you off that. But a lot of times that will charge you up is what you do for other people, what you do for the world, the universe, and what your purpose is. But how do you get here? How do you get these skills? Do you have to go to a stellar university, which they tell us, when we're 14, for that 14-year-old, kind of lay it out for them on the steps you took to get here, because not everybody has, great father, great mother, great granny. I know you love your granny. Not everyone has that.
You talking about, when you say how I got here, you're talking about sitting in Colombia on 3-acre property in a, arguably a $2-3 million house in Los Angeles for far less. Is that what we're talking about?
Todos, yeah. Because they'll call you lucky, Seth. They'll say, oh, of course you did. Oh, you have NBA friends. Of course you did. They gave you the money, or someone gave it to you, so lay it out.
I bootstrapped all of it, man. And, honestly, you talk to the fact that I had a good father and a good mother and a good grandmother. And yes, I did. But you know what? I think my secret was realizing early how harsh and cruel the world could be. Realizing that there's a set of rules that you're being told, but if you have the courage to step outside of those, that there's a whole other set of rules for the people who have the courage to step out of that. And what I mean by that is, when I was 10 years, well, no, it was 8 or 9 years old or somewhere in between. I suffered a devastating reality when my mother and father divorced. Right, we were basically the Huxtables type of family. Both my parents graduated from college, both had good jobs. We're living in the suburbs. We're one of the few Black families that kids are in the private school. We're a speck of pepper in a bowl of salt. We're the exception. We're the beginning to, changing the narrative of what it is to be Black in America. And there's this bright future with our family. We were the standard. And then divorce happened. And so for me, that moment really made me think about everything I've been told up to that point and the human condition. And the human condition was real because my mom, she's bipolar, and she had some pretty serious episodes, which led her away from the family. I love my mama to death. She's my number one, but I also faced the reality for 3 or 4 years. She left. I mean, once they divorced, she packed up and moved out, and I didn't physically see my mom for 3 or 4 years. Right. She'd call me every now and again, and she was on her journey. She was seeking help. She was in, medical facilities. I mean, it was some real shit that I was, trying to wrap my head around with my 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old brain. And on the other side, I had my father, and I watched my father become a single dad. And that was never his plan. We're from Texas, we're Southern. So he was looking for a good wife to hold down the house and keep the infrastructure in place while he was going out chasing the paper. And my dad was an engineer. And so, as engineers, I mean, you leave, and he was an on-site engineer, meaning like on construction sites, government funded construction sites. So these guys are on site by 5, 6 a.m. every day. And they're at home at 6, 7, sometimes 8 p.m. at night. I mean, this is a real commitment. But I watched my mom struggle with what she was going through and put herself back together while watching my dad do something that he wasn't preparing to do. He wasn't this was not part of his plan. He had to bring in additional reinforcements, hired a nanny. That was the first time we had a white woman in our house exclusively, like helping us out. So that was kind of interesting to look at, how he was stitching all that together. And I'm not trying to bring color into it, but from the South, we used to be the house people. So I was trying to figure out, damn, like, all these things are happening. And what I realized, my dad's splitting time. He's traveling to Africa, working on construction projects there. So we're missing him 1 or 2 months at a time, but he's coming back with so much progress achieved there, while also moving the needle here, while keeping his kids in private school, while, still helping his divorced wife get through her stuff, because they grew up in the same small town in Texas. They're homies. They've been together since they were knee-high to a goose type of people. So he wasn't giving up on her. And so that whole situation, when you talk about in the introduction, my mom and my dad and all these great people, they're all great people, and they're all still very much in my life. But what I witnessed at a young age is like, 1, life goes on. 2, you got to stay nimble. And 3, you got to really know what you're trying to achieve. And then everything other than that is making decisions. For example, my mom was trying to get well and figure out her condition, which in the Black community, we don't really know much about. So she's trying to understand something that we don't talk about in our community. And she's on that journey. And I'm realizing that. My dad, he's just trying to raise 2 strong boys. He was blessed with 2 boys. And his mission is like, I don't give a fuck. I got to get these boys to at least the level that I'm at, but preferably be way far more ahead than me, right? And that's his mission. And my grandmother, man, just the glue, just the concrete. My mom's grandmother, she was on both sides of the divorce, and she was just the glue. She was just keeping everything moving. And so that at the time was a hurricane for me, but that literally is what helped me understand that there's really no rules to shit when life happens. You have to figure out what you want. You got to play with the cards that you're dealt. And if you don't like them, you still got to play them, hope to get a better set of hands on the next draw, and just keep doing it, keep going. But you got to know what you want. And what I knew that I wanted above all else was I wanted to be free. And that's such a big word. And people say, oh, free, like what? I'm like, well, I saw all 3 of those generations, my grandmother, my mother, and my father. I saw all 3 of them really be beholden by a structure of finance that did bring some problems into the household. And so I kind of wrapped my head around that at an early age and said, all right, I started looking at all the people who are driving nice cars and where they're living and how they're living. And then I could see like some toxicity in some of that, but I could see these other people who are like doing it right. And I'm, going to family functions, and I'm trying to figure out what's the sweet spot. And so I determined, man, I think maybe my sophomore year in high school, I was like, I'm gonna do a 10 to 12 year track in the corporate world, and I'm gonna hit it hard. Like instead of graduating with 1 major, I'm gonna graduate with 2. Instead of just getting 1 job out of college, I'm gonna get 1. And I'm gonna start volunteering at nonprofit programs on the weekend. Like I'm gonna beef myself up. I'm going to absorb. I'm going to just be the corporate, exceptional Carlton Banks, the most perfect, exceptional example of what a Black American can be, coming from the slums of Beaumont, Texas to now. And I knew that once I felt the right moment, I was going to take everything I demonstrated and learned. I was going to flip it on the head of corporate America. And I was going to apply it to my own free enterprise and my own businesses that I've built up to this point. And, you saw the ending of that with Here Seattle when I started my own nonprofit. Like I didn't know how to run a nonprofit 10 years before I started Here Seattle, but I had volunteered so much with nonprofits, I figured it out. And I was like, now I'm going to take how to run a nonprofit to the topic that I'm passionate about. Right. And that was kind of like my crescendo to everything that I was planning to do. So now I got the credibility. Now I've worked at Deloitte. Now I've worked at Google, Microsoft, Facebook. I've served all these companies. And some of these companies by that time were putting money in my bank because Facebook was donating money to Here Seattle. Google was, Microsoft. I took real checks. I took $100K from Microsoft in 1 year. real checks. I'm not talking
Yeah.
like kitty money, like real checks. You know, once I got there, that was all the motivation I needed. I was like, okay, I have literally made it to the top of the corporate game. I could ride this out for the rest of my life. The only problem was I wasn't free. I was free from bills because at that point in time, all my bills were recurring. They were all on a credit card and they were recurring. I didn't see, I really had any mail. Everything was just paying itself and because I had that much money coming in, right?
Mm.
But I wasn't free because I'm still having to go to the office, having to work for someone, having to think about what I wear. This is before I got my tattoos, just like all of this, because I've always loved art, music, and expression, and how you want to express yourself. So there was a plan in place, and I don't want to get too far because I want you to ask some questions, and I can do that pretty quickly. So reel me in when you need to, but it was that. And I'll wrap that little chapter up in this discussion with the fact that, like, even through all the dysfunction that was happening in my family, like everyone individually was still showing me love in the own way that they could, So I also realized that there was some humility. They understood that we were experiencing this change, but I mean, I guess for the youngins, like you said, for the youngins, when you have experiences early in your life that you feel are devastating, it's better to take a closer look at them than to run away from them. Running away from them will eventually make you go back to them in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s, whenever you feel like you want to go back to them. I really dove into them as they were happening when I was young. And what it did show me was how real life can be. And it also inspired me to just like understand that things are going to happen. And I'm proud to say that when I look at my family that all went through that, we all went through it together. Like everyone survived it in their own way and is doing very well for themselves. So that's also something that I always check in on. It's like, man, we got through it and we're all doing better than we were before.
Man, that's a whole vibe. And I know why we've always stayed connected, because I've had similar experiences. And when you're that only one in the class, and when rap wasn't popular, but
Right.
when rap wasn't popular, and you're like, okay, I know Megadeth. Yeah, I'm not, before football, we gonna vibe out. But I remember when Anthrax and Public Enemy put that together. I said, I told you, man, music is music. Like, you just gotta have an ear to hear. How much for the success, and the best is yet to come for you. That's what I'm gonna put on you. Like, you haven't even got close to the peak. Neither of us have, because we still have so much energy and life just to give, God willing. But talk about, do you think exposure or education, which one would you pick? Or is the education, because some people say you got to go to school. And you and I went to school, so they'll say, oh, well, you have to go to school. But I tell people the exposure for me was the education. The things that I saw that my cousins who were 30 minutes down the street did not see, because I'm in the burbs and I only could get my haircut there. It's like, what would be more value? Because I'm telling people, school to me, school is whatever you live.
Listen, school. Well, our school system, I was actually just having this conversation last night with my fiance, which is like, there are certain countries that do school well. Japan does school well. Germany does school well. Germany's got it to a point where they break you out in different like tracks. Like at a young age, they understand what you're into. They're like, this is someone of the arts. This is someone of professional services. This is someone of like blue collar labor, and they send you on that track, and these kids are fulfilled in it because they have a way of understanding like who this person wants to be. Now, the problem with the United States educational system is we're still conditioned and being taught how to just be someone who graduates from college and plugs into an assembly line at a corporation. This is how our educational system is still built. So without going even deeper into those weeds, the simple answer is exposure. Listen, I was a B-, C+ student my whole life, right? And just cruised through it, just cruised, right? I got straight A's the last 2 years of college. My parents couldn't believe it. Their jaw was on the ground. Because the last 2 years of my profession or my major or my, defined studies, it was all in lab. So I was a computer science person and I was a designer. So the last 2 years before you graduate and those type of curriculums, you're literally having to demonstrate what you can do. It's no longer like read this chapter, take this Scantron, multiple choice. It's like now you got to demonstrate. And they realize, damn, Seth, he tests better in demonstration. He tests poorly in standardized testing because he doesn't give a shit. And it really doesn't get him locked in. What gets me locked in is when there's 50 other students and we got 3 weeks to produce this mosaic of different digital design pieces across a brand. And now I'm like, and playing sports my whole life, basketball, football, baseball, and wrestling. I like those environments because it's like, okay, now I got a reason to care because I'm going to bust everybody in their ass when I drop what I'm dropping, right? So now I'm in it, right? A Scantron doesn't get me in it. And so I've already told my fiance and I've told my mom and dad that my philosophy is, especially now living internationally, when my kids get out of school at 17, 18, they're not going to college for the first year. They're not going right into college. Because I watch so many of my friends go into college and they just pick a profession that they're not even sure they really want. It's a combination of their parents were doctors or accountants, so they feel like this is what you should do for the family legacy, or their parents weren't doctors or accountants. They were blue collar people and they want to go up to the next level. And instead of, trying to make the blue collar family better by starting a business in 3 generations of blue collar people, they want to go impress and go up to the doctors or the professional services and find out sometime along the way that they're really not into that. And then they end up starting their real life at 30 after 10 years of trying to do something and be something that you're not. What I mean by that is after my kids graduate from high school, they're taking a year off and they're traveling the world. And I hope I'm in a position to go with them. We're going to Africa. We're going to Europe. We're going to China. We're going to Japan. And I just want them to really feel themselves for a year. Because at 18, they got a good base of understanding of basic mathematics, literature. They can absorb things better than someone at 6. I keep telling my friends, stop taking your kids all around the world at 6 years old. Let them get a little more mature so they can absorb what's actually happening. Because I went around the world when I was a kid, and I can barely pull on some of those memories, man. Like they don't really stick with me the way that they stick with me now, And so I think exposure above all else. Me traveling the world in high school with my father really got me going. Seeing the different values of people. Seeing a difference between our capitalistic motivation, which is an advantage, which I have learned is a huge advantage in other countries that don't prioritize capitalism as much as like happiness. American-minded people can go to a lot of countries and be very successful because we're very much focused on the bag. But there also is the other side to that as well. And so I think exposure has really balanced me out. And I've been to over 28 countries now at this point, I think. And so I would say, man, to answer your question long-windedly, I got to stop answering these questions long-windedly so you can get through your content, but exposure over education for sure. But you got to get some basics in place, right? Mathematics, reading, writing and all that. But after that, man, if you got the sponge type mentality, which I believe there's a certain age where every human has a sponge-like mentality. It's just getting them absorbed in exposure earlier and often. Because at a certain point in life, people just stop being curious and they just do what they're being told. And that's, in my mind, the beginning to the end of your life is when you just stop being curious. The imagination is actually one of the greatest gifts God has given us. And if you exercise it on a regular basis, you'll discover a lot of things about yourself and about the world around you that you wouldn't actually know existed without that curiosity,
Yeah. And there are no wrong or too long answers because it's all about you. You are the story. The whole point is to show people how you started, sustained, and succeeded, because there's a lot of nonsense online. I think I told you this the other day. There's single people telling people how to be married. There's broke people telling people how to make money. And everybody is not going to win on a Turo play or an Airbnb play. And I don't care what podcast has this guest on. Ask that person and who they were the last decade, for the last 20 years. And if they weren't much of anything, and now, the machine is behind them, but you're listening to these Turo plays and people saying, max out your credit card and you should get a trust. No, you shouldn't. Excuse my language. Y'all never heard me say any language like this on this thing, 'cause I make it for the kids, but that's y'all know what type of game that is. That's some other game. I'm not even going to say it. I'm going to refine myself. Yeah. And how can you, I don't care if you have $2 million. Why do you need a trust? I bet your tax strategy, you might not even have your tax. You need to fire your CPA. Possibly.
Honestly, you can make a trust in a shoebox. I'm from the shoebox generation, man. Like I'm not from the shoebox generation. I say I witnessed the shoebox generation. I witnessed like my grandmother underneath her bed, after my grandfather passed, like she's got racks just under there in the shoebox, all organized in different ways for whatnot. And then she's got other money in the bank. Like she's got her whole system that she designed on her own. And I asked her when I was a kid, I was like, what's all this bread underneath the mattress? She's like, this is for emergencies. Don't worry, honey. I got stuff in other places to keep people's eyes off of me. But, you can create your own system how you want to create it. You know what I'm saying? And so she was also a big inspiration in my ability to continue to keep my imagination going. Because that's one thing in America that is difficult. I almost said difficult because, I go from Spanglish to,
talk that talk.
Deficit. Or DC feed. There is a certain point in every person's life where they give up on their imagination and they just lock into a system, right? And she always taught me, she's like, stay fresh. She always say that. And when you say stay fresh, people think that's like clothes, but what she was saying is my mind, keep your mind fresh, keep your curiosity up, man. So yeah, dog. I mean, it's honestly at the end of the day, it was a large level of like what you would call success for me, or what you see as success. It's just been that level of curiosity and that just wanting to be exposed to things. I mean, you talk about in school, you was talking about Megadeth and Metallica and all that stuff. Man, listen, like so I didn't go to private school until I was 12. Like a real private school where like my dad was putting up some racks every year. And I was the black kid who was listening to Green Day, listening to Blink-182, listening to early No Doubt, listening
when
to Silver.
I come around.
Yeah, I was listening to that stuff because I was a musician, I was a drummer, and my dad raised me on classical music, but something drew me to that alternative rock that was happening in the mid-90s, Nirvana, all those bands. I was like, man, and I was always a heavy-handed drummer. My dad played the trumpet, and my dad wanted me to be a more classically trained, like jazz drummer who's just whispering over the drums, and it's just like, man, but something about me, I just wanted to play. I was listening to Guns N' Roses. I was going back to the 80s and seeing, and just like then Bad Brains, an all black punk rock band. And they're just like, in the way the guy was attacking the drums and I was like, man, so I was the weird black kid who liked white music. And that's what I was getting. That's what people were feeding me all day long. They were like, why do you like this music? Like, why people don't play this music? And so like, I also had to fight, man. I fought stereotypes my whole life, man, and that also taught me too, because man, you're only as good as your brain and what your brain believes you to be. And so you can take in all this information of people who are just ripping you, going in on your Converse, your Chucks, because the same Chucks you wore a year before, the same Chucks that you pull up to the first day of school the next year, like breaking you down because they got on the fresh pair of J's. Because we're from the generation, like the first day of school, everybody's like coming out with their best and brightest. It's like when you see the athletes on the NBA walking in with their fits every day before the game. Like that's the first day of school for us back in the day. And I'm walking up still in the same raggedy ass jeans and Chucks that I had on the year before, and it's not because I couldn't, go get something more nice. I was just really into that, like, punk rock. Like, I don't need all this shit. Like, I was a rebel, and I was a rebel in the mindset, and so I have always embraced, like, being on the fringe of everything that I've done. I found more happiness being a journeyman and walking alone as to being a part of the pack.
That's real talk. And because you were in Beaumont, Texas, and I know Nevada, and you were able to travel. If you were in Oakland growing up, and you said, hey, I went fishing, folks were like, fishing? Like, because for the city, like, fishing, and you are a real angler, you ride horses fast. I love horses. I've jumped on a real bull in Texas. It's on there on YouTube. Like, those things, it's all about exposure, because I was taught, like you were taught, you only like the music you like because your ear is trained to hear it. And when you play instruments, you got to learn how to play various things. Most kids, I find now as an adult, didn't play instruments. It was mandatory at our school. Like, you had to do
it. Yes. And my kids will be in the arts. They'll be in music. I mean, my brother, this is one of my dogs. He wants to say hello. Come here.
What's that?
This is Beaumont. Speaking of Beaumont, this is Beaumont. That's
he already came.
Yeah, that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. You said the B word, and he heard that from deep, man. Because like I said, we got 2.5 acres, so he was all the way down at the river, and he heard the B word and came cruising. But yeah, man, it's all about exposure, and it's all about the arts. And then you just hone it from there. But I'm gonna, till the day I die, I'm gonna take exposure over education. There's a certain point when you have the foundational elements, where exposure's only going to take you so far, and we don't have to get deep on it because it just drives me insane. But the reason why I know exposure works is, like, I've had 6 friends visit me since I've been in this house, and I just moved in 3 months ago. So it's whatever, right? I'm still getting used to, like, looking at this view every morning. Sometimes I'm like, when am I checking out? Like, I'm in a hotel, you know what I mean? I'm like, nah, man, this is cute, Got my first utility bills, and it was like combined, everything was like $280 USD. I'm like, man, it's just crazy. So, but I'll tell you why exposure is real. A lot of my friends, only one of the 6 friends that have visited me, had been many countries and or had been to Colombia many times. So we don't need to talk about that. But the other 5 were like, this is my first trip to Colombia. They saw on Instagram I live in Colombia. They hit me with the Insta, like, hey, man, let's grab a drink while I'm in town. I'm like, well, literally, I'm 15 minutes from the airport that you're landing in. It's 45 minutes to the city, because everyone that's traveling here is going to Medellin. They're trying to get to the city. And I'm like, yo, let me swoop you. Mm-hmm. When you land, we'll take a 15-minute journey over to my crib, whether it's breakfast. I got a friend coming in actually on Saturday. I'm grabbing him at 10 a.m. I said, we'll be at my house by 10:15, 10:30. Once you get through customs, we'll have lunch or breakfast or brunch, whatever you want to call it. You'll be in the city by 1, right? Yeah. I've been doing this with all my friends that are coming, because right now it's popular to get over here. And it's not that expensive. Man, this is why exposure is crazy. All of those 5 friends, leaving the one friend who's just worldly and knows how it all works. Mm. I had them back in the car, getting driven down to Medellin by my personal assistant, with their heads just scrambled. They were coming for 3-4 days, let's party in Medellin. Yeah. And they're leaving going, yo, you see what Seth got going on here? Like, I'm still down. I'm still ready to party. But like, now this other side of my brain is going like, yo, he's living like he's living in Calabasas, but he ain't in Calabasas, and he ain't paying Calabasas prices. And and so that's why I think exposure is crazy. Cause like, man, after they got through their partying days, their 3 or 4 days of partying, like, I'd say, hey, and you're always welcome to come back up and stay at the crib the night before you fly out, because it's, sometimes leaving the city in Medellin, you get stuck in like 6 or like 60 minutes to an hour and a half of traffic. And if you're one of those play it close type people, you're gonna miss your flight. I say it's better, man, on your last night. Just cruise up here, get comfortable, have your bags packed, stay in one of the guest bedrooms, and then you're 15 minutes, boom, right there whenever you want, right? So I had a lot of friends exercise that. In the time that they came to visit, from the 4 or 5 days they went off to venture to come back for their last night and, a little hangout session out here on the patio, man, their brain was all the way over here, just thinking like, yo, so how'd you do this? What was it like to get your, your title and how did you get funding for your mortgage? And like, because and so that is a true testament to exposure, right? They saw it once and their brain went all the way over here. They didn't even come here for an international realty seminar. I just showed them what I was doing for a couple hours before they went off to do what they really came here for, which was party. And it stuck, right? And that's why exposure can be so sticky, because it's like it almost sticks harder than like the 6 hours at the Holiday Inn on a Sunday seminar, right? Because you're seeing it, you're in it, you're living it. Like the bruh's telling you, like, yo, this is how I did it. You know what I mean? Without having to tell you, because you're just looking at it. It's a living, breathing testament. You know what I mean?
And that's part of why the book or the documentary, the movie, it could all be, it needs to be laid out for that person. Because there's a kid, listening, whatever state, whatever country he's at, it doesn't matter. But it's so difficult to find somebody who can kind of maybe open up that blueprint. Like I was pushed to do my first course, and I was surprised at the feedback I was getting, because I'm like, this is basic stuff on how to go to Africa, but people were just like, no, I was always told this, and I'm like, I ain't got no cap. I'm not selling Africa to you. I'm just telling you, you want to live cheaper, get out of America, wherever you want to go, and it's the same thing wherever you
go. yeah, and honestly, it's like, number one most important thing. Not to plug Colombia over Africa, but since we're on the topic, number one thing is like, you're not going to come here fluent. Most people, and you're not going to come here understanding how the politics and the culture of this company works or this country works. Just, you got to accept that. And you can apply those same two rules to anywhere you leave that you're not native to, right?
Yeah.
Find you someone that genuinely wants your best interests, who if you can afford $500 a month for a strong executive assistant, a strong person who can really use that 500 a month and really change their family's lives. They're not greedy. They're like, 500 is great. Like, I'll take that for the 10 to 15 hours a week that they apply to advancing you into where you want to go. It'll be the greatest money ever spent. But the hardest part is finding the people you can trust. You know what I mean? I went through that. This has been, like I said, I've been visiting Colombia for 10 years. I didn't get serious about it until about 5 years ago. But we can say it's been a 10-year process, because the first 5 years is just having fun and doing discovery. You're still kind of wrapping your head around things and trying to, figure out if you want to go to the next level. So it's been a 10-year process to get my things together, but I didn't do it alone, man. Once I decided to do it, man, I had to put my team together here, and they really, all the way up to the point of getting a permanent visa, buying a house. Like, the reason I bought 2.5 acres, it's not because I'm trying to ball on this video and be like, I got 2.5 acres. It's like, there are certain requirements of how much property you need to own in order to be considered for a permanent visa. I don't need all this thing, honestly.
Yeah. No, you do. You do, because you're going to make use of it. You need it. You're going to make use of it.
But you know what I'm saying.
You need it.
I mean, I'm going to have it all hooked up. I'm going to have a new project going every year. You know what I mean? Like I put in, like this was my project this year, man. I put in those pavers, all the walking pavers down throughout the property. So, I'm always going to be doing something, but I don't need, but it was in the priority of things that I needed. It was fulfilling the requirement of having enough to be considered for permanent visa, right? These people who, and again, it goes back to, like you said, your first seminar, people saying, well, these people said this, people say, man, how many people are like, I got brothers, man, in the States, man, I'm about to fly out of Medellin and give me an apartment. And I'm like, and that apartment is actually going to still keep you on, a 6-month visa. It's not
Yeah.
enough. It's not enough investment in the country for them to consider you like you can stay as long as you want. So, people got to understand that too. Like, it's you got to understand your appetite, and then you got to match your appetite with the requirements of how you want to fulfill your life living abroad. And, you might have to take a couple of years off and stack up some cheese, because getting lending internationally, getting lending in other countries is not as easy as us walking into Chase Bank and getting, pre-qualified for a mortgage. It's not that same game. Well, it's not that same game here in Colombia. I'm sure there's a lot of more opportunities in Africa, far more easy, which is a great segue back to why Africa is a great option, which I'm going to explore. But you get what I'm saying. Like, you really got to understand your landscape and stop listening to people chirping, right? And so I tell all my friends who are really getting serious about investing or making the actual pilgrimage, expatting to Latin America, I say, until you take 4 solid weeks or 3, a full month in the country to live there like you would normally live there, go get you a long-term stay, Airbnb, get the fuck out of the hotels. Excuse me, I know there's a children's program, so or you're growing it to be. So I'm gonna chill out.
Yeah, they children with the they done heard it all. The children, we try to keep it as family friendly. We ain't gonna tell them what the party really consists of, but they'll figure it out.
Right.
They've Googled it already.
Yeah, they'll figure it out. So get out of the grid, get out of the gringo friendly areas where the tourism is just so over the roof that you've never experienced how people are just so friendly. It's like, yeah, well, that's their job, right? So get out of that, get you a long-term stay, get into everyday life, go down to a grocery market, pick out some fresh fruit, like walk around, like develop a life for 3 or 4 weeks. While doing that, understand the economics, understand your requirements, and then move. Because a lot of people think it's as simple as like packing up their bags, moving here, buying an apartment. You can do that, but they're still going to bust your ass and make you go back to the States in 6 months because you don't own enough to, stay until the next year, right? And so you could buy a small apartment, and then you could find someone to help you manage your apartment, and you put them on payroll and you register yourself as a business, and then that fulfills the requirements. So there's so many ways to do it. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you, you've done so much. We've talked about, some of your give backs, but I could almost see it being a give back where you show people how to do this. But what is a community give back that you are doing now, or that you like to do in the future? I know something is on your mind. Are you already doing it?
I'm already doing it. Didn't I? I think I explained that earlier. I mean, like, I didn't need to build a 6-bedroom house. I only occupy 3, really. My bedroom where I sleep, my office, and my gym. This is for anybody who wants to come through and stay. I mean, dog, I would not be here right now if it wasn't for Christian's mom. My assistant, who's my right hand, Christian, who's actually right now in Medellin right now, taking care of some business for us right now. We met 10 years ago. He was my tour guide. 10 years ago, we stayed connected. Eventually got to a point where I'm like, man, you can make more money just working with me. And so that's what we do. But when I decided to move here, his mom, she's got a, rustic 6-bedroom house in the mountains, like where I'm living, farmhouse. She has pigs, chickens, all that shit. Man, the first year, she, like, when I announced to Christian that I'm gonna make a move, there was no negotiation. She's like, you're staying at the farm. Got your room set up, hooked it all up. She even got the cable company to run fiber up to the house. Like, she got it set up for me. And she showed love, And if it wasn't for that 1.5 years, almost 2 years that I was laid up there, like moving, and really wrap my head around it, I would not be here 100%. And so my give back right now is just creating a place where people can come through and just wrap their head around it, catch up with me. I mean, I went dark on a lot of my homies, man, when I moved, because I felt like I needed to. I found this extreme exhaustion between trying to explain to everybody what I'm doing while I was trying to do it. Like, it was just killing me. Like, everyone's like, what are you doing? How you doing it? Where? I'm like, man, I'm not even there yet. Like, I'm trying to do these things. Like, I need to. I arrived at a decision in my head that the more time I put towards what I'm trying to do and less time of explaining it, I have a higher probability of achieving it.
Yeah.
Right. So I just went into that mode for 2 years. I would text back to the homies. I'd stay in touch, but not to the degree of like what they actually know I was doing. It got to the point where like homies were like, Seth's off the grid, man. We don't know what he's doing. Like, I'm getting whispers, like, and I'm like, good. Let's just keep it that way until I'm ready to, So I got a lot of friends coming through just to reconnect. While reconnecting, it's inspiring them for possibilities in their personal life. And it's not even just, I hope that anyone who hears this, and I hope that anyone who comes through and gets to stay with me. And we've talked about you coming through, Kellen, and that's real, man. I hope you come through. I don't want it to be a pitch on or understanding on how you can live in another country or live in Colombia. Really, I want it to be like, one of my friends was like, man, I'm not interested in ever living abroad, but like, just seeing how you were able to do so much in the last 2 years that I've seen you has really reminded me how much you could do in 2 years when you have a purpose. And I've been complacent, and I've been kind of just, phoning it in and doing my thing. And like, wife and 2 kids, I'm just kind of doing the dad thing, but I still got so much in me more that I want to do. And like, you've shown me that I can, right? Even if it's not Colombia, even if it's not Africa. So like, that's my life purpose right now, is just to show people like, yo, like, you can do it, but you got to really want it, and you got to really see it. You got to see it first. And I really saw it. And I got to tell you, man, I took some L's along the way. I mean, I had some people take money from me. I had people make me empty promises. I went through all the horror stories of living abroad, but you got to have the skin for it. And
wait. You didn't know, because somebody will say, now, I don't think you went through all of them, because there was some stuff, again, Seth had hit me up like, are you in Colombia? I said, man, we just left. And he knew, because I don't let y'all know when I move, just the way that I move. It ain't going to be I'm at the Waffle House with a client or with my family or whatever, and you roll up on me, Right. But in Colombia, people were asking me, hey, did you see anybody on that, whatever that drug is, they blow on you and put it in your drink? I said, well, no, I think they do that to people looking for prostitutes. And I'm not in pursuit of none of that. So I hope that didn't happen to you, but you can talk about that, but you're a passport king and not necessarily a passport bro. And that's the difference. You came out with the purpose of something bigger than the concha.
Right. Hold on. I got to reschedule this meeting because this is some real stuff and I want to get through it. Let's see here. 12:30.
While you do that, I'm a brag on Seth. If you guys look, links will be in the description. Go look at his Instagram and see the stuff that he does. Even when he was stateside, Seth, I'm gonna go fishing, which my wife still remembers that. Like, man, Seth, hey, you can take us, And I'm like, my Uncle Tommy has taken you fishing. We've gone. I got a nephew. She's like, but the way Seth goes off the grid, wherever he's at, all he needs is a truck, a fishing rod. Then he'll put the oysters on the fire grill. Like, the man is a Renaissance man in all things. And he don't call himself that, but I'm telling you, it's like nothing he can't do. This is the real life Black Batman. It's Bruce Wayne.
Honestly, that's the way I've always seen it in my mind. And that's funny, man. You're really hitting on a lot of things that have literally been discussed in the last 48 hours. I was at a friend's house and they got into this deep DC Marvel discussion. These are all Colombian, right?
And talk about Good.Brand and how, you know, you took what you were doing in the States, migrated it over, and you're just really just doing whatever you're going to do. You're doing it where you want to do it, because a lot of people want to live that life.
Cool. I'm going to wrap up on the Bruce Wayne, and I'm going to dive right into it. Bruce Wayne's going to be quick. I was at a dinner party 2 nights ago. And they're all Colombian, and they got into this discussion, DC Marvel, everyone's talking about their favorite characters. And it's funny you should mention that, because I said, you know, I really love villains. So I've always appreciated Joker. I've always appreciated Magneto, and X-Men, because really the villain and the hero are really no different. They both suffered a loss early in their life, and they're just actually approaching how they deal with it differently, right? For example, like Joker got made fun of most of his life, and he was ostracized as an offbeat. So instead of showing his brilliance and intelligence, he decided to just show the world by destroying the world as much as he could, i.e. Gotham City, right? Bruce Wayne, what happened to Bruce Wayne? He suffered an early loss in his life. His mom and dad got killed, right? But he decided to approach his suffering in a different way. But this is why I love the whole conversation between villains and heroes, because they're actually the same person. Just the methodology of how they deal with their pain is different, right? And look at Magneto and Professor X, you know, both suffered early things, and they deal with them differently. Anyway, that being said, you're correct. I've always identified with Bruce because, you know, I don't have house parties at my house. I don't have people at my house unless they're close friends. Like, I live a very private life. I can get active in the streets if I want to, like Bruce Wayne does when he puts on his cape and, you know, it gets out the Batmobile, he can get active. But when he goes back, it's like he's back to his own thing. So you're 100% correct on that. Jumping into like really how you apply everything that it takes to be here. It's one of my favorite topics. And is there anything specifically you want me to focus on, Kel, on like the game? Because there's a lot, but there's like a set of tools that really are important and can apply to any situation.
You know, it's a safe space. So do you, and I like I said, I hope that they get it so they can apply it to their real life.
So the core question is, you had all this experience in the US and now you're living abroad. So, and this is the biggest thing about being creative while also understanding your means, right? And I'm going to use real numbers here, okay? Just so everyone can see it, how it goes. I was spending I was doing about $7,000 a month in Seattle. $7,000 from the $2,300 for my living situation, groceries, dining out, car payments, life, right? Somewhere falling between $5,500 to $7,000. 7 would be a high month. 55 would probably be an average if I did it across a year, right? I started Good.Brand and it started to work. I was starting to retain clients. I was using all the clients I garnered with my nonprofit and walking myself back in behind the back door, say, remember me, the guy who did the nonprofit? Well, now I have a for-profit business who can actually do design services for you. So it was sticking because I had some relativity and relationships in place. So that's one thing. Number one, always stay in contact and nurture your relationships, even if you don't think it applies for what you want to do next. Just treat people how you want to be treated. And if there's one thing you can always put in their mind is how you want to be remembered. How do they talk about you when you're not in the room? They're always going to talk about you with high gracious when you're in the room. But your real brand, and I'm a branding person, I own a branding digital studio, is your true brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So always think about that, right? When you're engaging with people. It's like, how do you want to be perceived when you're not there to defend it and or put pressure on it to be anything more than what it really is, right? So how the relationships, walked in the back door, got some deals off the ground. But I was hiring all US talent. And unfortunately, for the youth out there, I'm going to be honest with you as a business owner, y'all are expensive right now in the States. And frankly, you don't really do that great of work because you're young, but you have standards of, wanting to make 75, 85, 100,000 before you're even 28, 26, 27. It's crazy what's going on right now. And so I was doing that. And, my second year, we did $800,000 build and work. And like, I think I barely came home with like $75,000. So I'm overpaying people. And I'm thinking that people just want US facing talent. And man, it just hit me. I said, listen, I'm going to scale down. I got to get out of here. I got to go somewhere where I can maintain the same standard of living that I have now for less. So I gave myself first a pay cut. Right.
Yeah.
So I say, moving to Colombia, I could still go out to restaurants. I could still vibe out, live the same lifestyle, but it goes from 5,500 to $7,000 to 2,000 max in Colombia. So now I'm not being the villain, meaning like I'm cutting everybody else's pay. I'm going to do me first. Right. So I get here and cut my shit out. And I'm like, man, this feels nice. Like I'm seeing that money being saved. So I'm like, that's good. And then I go and talk to my client-facing talent and I say, hey, guys, we're going to cut all of the production resources who are just doing the work, not client-facing, not having client meetings, not, all of my client-facing talent is still US-based. But the production work, man, I took all that over here, right? Since I've done all that, and I'm talking bilingual, that's literally how I've been able to sustain it. And I'm not trying to champion offshoring, because I do believe that it's important to have US based client facing talent. But when you're talking about just pushing pixels and getting it done, and I'm paying, annually $85K for someone to just push pixels for someone here who's doing it at $35K, and it's like literally changing their life. And they're literally doing a better job. They're literally always on time or before time. They're literally far more appreciative and thankful of what $35,000 a year here is for a designer in Argentina or Colombia or Mexico or Spain is like a six-figure salary, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't feel bad. I don't feel like I'm tearing them up. And they want to work on American brands. Number one, like they don't want to work on their same regional brands their whole life. These are designers who want to touch the Nikes and the Adidas and the Googles and the Facebooks. And like, I'm also bringing that opportunity as well. And I'm seeing a massive overhead cut while seeing a huge increase in the quality and the performance and everything across the line. And so that's just the truth, man. Like I'm just keeping it real. Like you said, real game. I'm just keeping the game as real as possible. That's what it is. That's really how it went down. I never imagined myself to do offshoring, but I will say this, and I hope this goes out to all the people who are in the creative industry stateside, like it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
You guys got to stay on top of your stuff. You guys got to stay on top of like getting your stuff turned in on time. The idea of the best creative talent being served exclusively out of Japan, Canada, the United States, and Germany, that's pretty close to being over. It's coming. It's really coming. Even the big brands that I work with, they're telling me like, oh, we just love that you have a mosaic of people from all different walks of life. They approach brands differently. And a lot of these global brands are now realizing if they are a global brand, why are they hiring 50 designers in America to focus on a brand that's being served globally? It's coming.
So
right?
The question is, though, since, if the labor gets cheaper, does that mean that, what they're going to give you as an entrepreneur less? Because it's like, well, you don't have to pay the overhead. So can you still justify the high prices? Because, the
Yeah,
high
I can justify that because, like I said, all of my client-facing team, anyone who's facing the client, making decisions with the client, working with the client, budget planning with the client, project managing with the client, all stateside.
Okay. So it's still good, and they don't know, what you're paying them. They just know it's good work. And I put that out there because if you think about, if I'm a developer, designer, and say, man, my fee is going to go lower, why don't I go do what you do, go work with you, make what I would call make more in the long run, and live a more peaceful life. Like, you get to do things in your day-to-day life and just have a conversation like this that most people can't take the time out in their day to have a conversation like this because they're just running on that mouse wheel, because that's America. I gotta go. If it's not one thing, it's another. Oh, take kids to baseball, cheerleading, which is a total waste of time, y'all. She ain't gonna be no professional cheerleader. And he struck out 3 times last night. Stop. Stop wasting your time on the same dang thing that ain't going nowhere.
You know what? And you know what's crazy about those two things? You know what's crazy about those two things? Those two things only are attractive to the youth because they're trying to impress other people. They're not even trying to do it to impress themselves unless they have an extreme passion for it. If a cheerleader has an extreme passion for cheerleading and flying and flipping, take that passion to gymnastics, right? I mean, why are you doing all this stupid shit? This is societal dumb shit, right? And those do exist, right? And then if a baseball player, like, I had so many friends, I played baseball. I had so many friends that were playing baseball to impress. Well, I mean, it's Texas. That's the thing to do after football, swing a bat, until all season's back up, right? So I had a lot of friends who were just killing time, buying time, playing baseball, but at the same time, they're trying to impress everyone. That's the wrong sport to be in, man. The only reason I played baseball, honestly, because my dad had a plan with everything he did for me. And that's another thing that I want people to hear. Like, my dad had a plan for everything. If we weren't at art museums or like summer camps or anything constructive on the weekends, my dad had us in sports. Like he says, it was the greatest form of free daycare and and construction of, like, mobilities and stuff. But the reason that I played baseball is because early in my life, I wanted to be a professional football player. We were hoping for a growth spurt. That didn't happen, but I was really good at football. When my dad said a backup plan, even if you don't get drafted in football, Seth, baseball makes more money and it's a longer career and there's more longevity. So we're going to put you at shortstop and center because you got good hand-eye coordination and you're fast. These are 2 positions that you could potentially fall back on. So everything he put me in was a plan. But for the majority of people doing this, like giving up their whole week, all their weekends every year for youth sports, that ain't helping.
To travel and spend money they don't have. And, Seth, you're built more like Barry Sanders. So you could have played, I played football. I wanted to go pro, but I also have that in my bloodline, in my lineage, right?
Me too, man. Me too. You talk about Grambling all the time. Pull this up right now. William Stell, my grandfather, still holds the rushing record and high hurdles track and field record at Prairie View. Like, I come from that line. My dad played at University of Texas. I come from that line, right? So what was the plan? They were hoping for it. I just stayed at 5'8" and couldn't move past it. But I still weigh 193 solidly. You know what I mean? And like, I don't make it look like 193. It's evenly distributed. But it just did what it did, man. And also, I just gained confidence in other areas of my life, and it started to become less attractive. You know what I mean?
I definitely get that. And that's, one thing, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So the way you pursue that, you pursue something else and it falls in line. Can you tell the people and I don't even want you to tell ranges, but if they need help or if they do
Yeah.
want to contact you, you've shown the power of what family for all you women who, you know, you're on your fourth baby father, or for you men on your fourth baby mama. You see what divorce can do, but you also see what having a plan can do. My goodness. And I'm not trying to shame anyone. I'm just saying you can't keep having kids and just not have a plan, because like you said, your mother went to school, Cosby, Huxtables, but mental health is a real thing. And physicians don't know what sparks. We don't know if it's the government playing games with people, you know, putting something in the brain and, okay, we're just going to do this because it's big business and medicine. Like, you just don't know. I'm a conspiracy theorist. Yeah, you know, but
Same.
yeah, but give the game where they can find you, because Seth needs his own show on real TV, on podcast, but he's living his best life. So I know he don't want to take the time to, you know, have to listen to corporate. So it has to be done in a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, everyone can find me at Seth.Stell@gmail, and I mean that. That's I'm sorry for these field dogs. They're going crazy right now. You know, when you live in the country, especially in other countries, there's a lot of dogs that don't belong to anybody, but the neighborhood takes care of them, and they just run around, and they're setting it off right now. They're over there having their own little thing. But I got my email structured in a way that anything that comes through Seth.Stell is family or connection based. So anything that comes through there, I mean, it's like, it's not even spam. It's just like people that I have are connected to me, whether it's family or friends. So Seth.Stell is how you can reach me. There's so much more to uncover and talk about, obviously, as you know. But really it's a mindset. And if you want to learn more about what I'm doing daily, you can go to Good.Brands.com. So that's my digital studio. And what else? I mean, yeah, that's the ways you can contact me, you know.
You guys, we could do this all day, every day, but I know ADHD is a real thing with a lot of y'all, so you can only take so much. And the game overload is for you to contact Seth, and contact with an open heart, and don't try to be a colonize his time or a blood-sucking vampire, but you've been blessed with the game. And make sure, if you do nothing else, you share this with somebody. It will change their life. Y'all be blessed.
Hi everyone. Have you ever been curious about visiting Africa? Which African country were you interested in? Kenya, Nigeria, Uganda, South Africa, Ethiopia? Which country are you interested in? My good friend, Kellen Cash Coleman, came up with a course called My First Trip to Africa that'll guide you through this process. It's only $20, and in this course you'll learn about passports, visas, vaccinations that you need before you go there, as well as a budget, how much the trip is going to cost. He also talks about what you should pack, what you should take with you, how you should travel on a budget. Did you know that $100 is worth 1,000 South African rand and over 10,000 Kenyan shillings? So imagine what you can do with $100 back home. I say back home because I'm from Sudan, I'm African, I already know how it's like. I know that, you know, when you convert Canadian and American money, it goes a long way when you're traveling across Africa. So if you're curious, if Africa is a place that you've always wanted to go, always wanted to move there, Kellen Cash is the person to ask. Check out the course. There's a little preview you can listen to before you actually purchase it. If you're interested in this course, visit www.diversifiedgame.com. Don't miss out.
Are you tired of the rat race in America? Are you ready to visit the motherland to relax and rejuvenate? Are you ready to explore all that Africa has to offer? Then check out the brand new Diversified Game Academy course, Prepare for My First Trip to Africa. Are you worried about being able to afford the trip? We got you. We will show you how to travel either on a budget or as a baller. Learn how to stress the value of the USD. Did you know that 100 United States dollars is worth over 1,000 South African rand, or 10,000 Kenyan shillings, or 54,250 West African CFA? Are you worried about taking your kids? Get the game from Kellen Cash, a bona fide world traveler, having traveled to almost 20 countries, several of those in Africa. Get the game on taking your kids on their first trips. Learn how to find the best tickets, get the visas, and plan your own adventures in Africa. Don't let Eddie Murphy have all the fun. Plan your own coming to Africa trip starring you, produced by you, and featuring you. If you are ready for a life-changing experience, sign up for our course today, Diversified Game Academy. Get prepared and purchase at diversifiedgame.com.